Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Sarah Colado of Architecture Talk. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about principles of communication through your design visualizations. I have Jamie Wilkes with me, who actually runs an archivist company out of the UK. And we decided to come together and talk a little bit about what to look out for and what is important to focus on as you're choosing to, kind of show your work and your ideas through archivists. Of course, all of these modalities of communication is super important, whether it's a graphic, a drawing, a picture of your work, or a copy on your website. But archivist has that special ability to communicate something you haven't yet built. So therefore, perhaps go into a new market or attract a client on a new project that you haven't yet experienced building. And we'll talk a little bit about that with Jamie today. So Jamie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your business.
Okay, then. So a bit about me. I live just outside Birmingham in the UK, so in Jaoin. So we tend to service architects throughout the UK. I'm a dad to Ruby, who's just turned 7. So she's got her sort of what's the word I'm after? Yeah, she's got her ways of working, and we have to sort of try and juggle what Ruby's up to and things, and bring that into how this is. I guess, yeah.
How working from home feels like. Do you work from home or do you have an?
I do work from home. Yes. Sorry. So so it's last week we were. I was on a phone call as such, and then she just comes sort of barging in, sort of thing. Which I mean, as you was just saying a few minutes ago, this happens all the time throughout COVID, and people are used to it. But yeah, we're currently working from home, so that's currently where we're at. As for the business, we are. There's 2 of us in the business. We both work remotely, but constantly in constant communication, either through phone or sort of Zoom like this.
That's brilliant.
Sectors we work in tends to be mainly residential at the minute, or leisure sectors as well. But yeah, we can sort of provide images for any sectors really.
I love this. So did you always work remotely or did that shift over Corona?
How did that? We a bit of both, really. I mean, I guess rewind to the beginning when I first started the business. I worked from home for many years, and then just after Corona, I decided that I wanted to grow the business to more than just myself. So we took on some serviced offices, but then we worked at serviced offices for about a year. But then we decided that actually we could do this remotely, and it just frees you up to, as you were saying before, like digital nomad sort of thing, that you can. It just gives you that flexibility to not be in one place. And if anyone can make virtual working work, it should be us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I mean, for sure, what you're doing allows you for that. But I think that you still have to develop relationships with local offices. As you said, you focus a lot on the UK. So tell me a little bit about how that is. How do you develop your relationships, even though you work remotely? Do you still go to different meetings or reach out to architecture firms, or it's through referrals mainly? How do you maintain those relationships?
For me, I do a lot of posts on LinkedIn, so it's kind of like puts you out to the rest of the world, so to speak. So I do a lot of that, and then after that, beyond that, it's just using the phone or Zoom, and as and when we're needed for meetings. And yes, we'll go along to meetings, but I must admit, in the early days when I first set up, I'd go to more meetings, but then I think people just get used to working this remote kind of way, and it happens less and less. But yeah, it's a combination of everything, essentially.
Sure. And you run a blog as well.
I do, yes. Yeah, set up my blog. When was that? Probably just under a year ago.
Nice.
One of those things.
How's that going? I saw that you post a lot of really good content there. Good writing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you always think of these great ideas, and I'll write a blog about that. But it's actually finding the time to write the blogs. But yeah, no, it is quite rewarding when you get your blogs written and posted out, and like get nice sort of feedback coming back. So that's always nice. But
Sure.
no, I would like to write more.
Yeah.
Make the time for it. I don't need to find it; just need to make the time.
For sure. But I think it does do a lot for lead generation, for exposure, for that communication as well about what you're doing, for letting people to discover you as well, especially through LinkedIn, which I think is more of a professional community that is looking to connect over business. So I think that it really does that job. And I think, it's great that you actually started doing that. I wanted to like deep dive into that a little bit, because obviously your blog shares a lot of expertise. You talk a lot about both, knowledge that can be used for archivists, the people that are already practicing that can learn from you, but also for architects and your clients, right? So how did you, first of all, how did you find a certain shift maybe in your business or in your communications with people once you started the blog? Did anything change for you?
Possibly off the back of starting the blog, one of the first posts I did was about game engines in architecture. And as soon as you mention sort of game engines architecture, I say this many times, that the two are very different, the very opposite ends of the spectrum sort of thing. You think one's about beauty and creation and the other's destruction. And you sometimes get funny looks at people and it's like, game engines in architecture sort of thing. And my first sort of real blog that I wrote was about using game engine technology to deliver the 3D content that we produce. And as I said before, it's when you turn off the guns and the bad guys, it does leave you with a really good platform for exploring our unbuilt buildings.
Is that like what's it called, Unreal Engine?
Yeah, Unreal Engine. I mean, there's several, but Unreal Engine is our chosen game engine that we work with. But there are others. Others are available, so to speak. But off the back of doing the blog, we were approached by Quadrant Housing Magazine, and they ran a little article on us, and
wow,
which was pretty cool. And
I love that.
Pardon?
I love that. It really shows like how far a blog post can go, people discovering that, and I think getting attracted to specifically the content that is shared in that as a great testimony to like the power of writing and sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, so that was that was November last year when that was sort of the issue we were featured in was November. But then off the back of that, they also run industry events, and they've asked us to go and speak at one of their events at the end of February, which is also very exciting. So it's you say all this came from a blog.
Wonderful. I love this. That's excellent. So tell us a little bit about basically when you're preparing an image, what is the most important thing that you think about in order to allow it to communicate the design really well?
For me, I always like to know where the client wants to be stood, where they want the view to be taken from, what they want to be communicating to their client, because at the end of the day, it is their design. We're just helping them communicate it. And for me to know roughly where they want to be sort of positioned, and sort of what might be in the background or the foreground, and then from that we sort of build up the I guess it's the bones of the image, and then just start layering it up with more and more detail, and adding the lighting and more sort of complex materials to build up the overall image. And then there's lots of to-ing and fro-ing with draft images. It's not like you start the image, render the image, job done. It's a two-way thing. We work together is the way I see it. And if I'm ever credited for doing a really nice image, I like to think that it's actually, it's a really nice design. That's why it looks good. It's a two-way thing.
Sure, I love that. And I love that you said that as the first thing, because I think that getting clarity on that communication is extremely important from many aspects. And so Can you give me just an example of what is it that usually architects want to communicate with their design?
I mean, if it's working with architects, it's often the images are used for planning purposes and to supplement a planning application. If it's developers we're working with, often it's for marketing. It's to
Sell.
what the marketing process, sales, yeah. So I guess it's different purposes. It's the same tool, same 3D model, but different purposes. And with the architects, it's a bit of design development as well, because as the image evolves, often there's certain elements that the designer might not have quite fully thought through or realised how it would look, and then it gives them the opportunity to refine the design or tweak it in some way. And as I was saying before, it's often a two-way thing, that the images or the model evolves through the development of the model.
That makes so much sense. I'm wondering, is the actual image different if you're doing it for a developer than for an architect? Since it's a different purpose, perhaps for sales and to attract clients, the image is warmer. Maybe there is more focus on interiors, whereas for planning applications, maybe it's not as decorated, but that's just me guessing. Is there a difference?
Yes, yeah. I mean, they say with sales that you should, try and get the end user, which is often the buyer or the tenant or whoever that might be, if you can get them sort of emotionally involved, or somehow see that if they could see themselves pulling onto that drive of that nice new house, or there's an aspirational car on the drive, so to speak, and they can somehow link themselves with the lifestyle that goes with that image, then they are more likely to buy into that image, which is good news for the developer, because it then sort of gets them emotionally attached to that development. Whereas you say, going back to supplementing a planning application, I guess it is just communicating the design in the best way possible.
Yeah, but not necessarily to create that sort of emotional connection that you're speaking about, which I think it's true. If you want to buy into an apartment, a house, you want to see yourself there, and also you want to feel cozy, right? Just by looking at the image, you want to see that, oh, I'll feel comfortable there. My family will feel comfortable there. So it's really a lot about that sort of creating that warm feeling. Whilst I think planning permits, again, is just a different purpose. But that's interesting. And I think that that's kind of where I wanted to go with this conversation, speaking about the principles of communication. So what would you say is important when, an architecture practice wants to communicate their design through archivists, to really take into account? And again, a lot of times we leave that decision to an archivist specialist, expecting that they'll have that expertise. But I think being able to prepare ourselves for what's to come and being able to communicate our own vision better might actually result in a better result at the end. So what is important for us as architects when we go to an archivist specialist to design the perfect image and to communicate our design in the best way possible?
I think perhaps to have thought about the finishes and the materials, and again lighting. It's I guess materials and textures and materials, lighting, and the geometry. That's kind of the three elements that make up an image, and I think each needs to be thought about from, I guess, both our perspective as how we can create the best image for our architect, but it's also got to come from the architect as to how best they want their design communicated as well. So it is a two-way, double-edged sword, I guess.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think that you can work with so much more if you're already given the materials and explanation as to, because again, like even if we think about wood alone, there is polished wood, there is more of the raft type of wood, darker, lighter. So do you usually take photographic references as well, or how do you communicate over the details of materials, for example?
I mean, wood is, I think every piece of timber you look at is different, isn't it? We've got thousands and thousands of images of, or maps of materials and texture maps for and bump maps of different timbers and libraries and things that we can use. But if a designer's got a specific flooring, then if I could send a link to like the manufacturers or something, we'll try and create a texture map that is as close as possible to that, to represent it in the image. And again, if they've got sort of photos or any additional information like that, if they could send that across, that really helps as well. But I think sometimes you see photos of, I guess, we'll rephrase that. You might see an image from a manufacturer online, but that can look very different to how it looks in a photo actually on site.
Sure, makes sense.
Balance it really, make the textures and materials be as realistic as we can for that particular job.
Sure. And do you find that architects come prepared, or do you often have to lead them by the hand?
Some more than others. I think sometimes if it's like the first time someone's commissioned this type of work, they might not necessarily know the road we have to sort of follow. But then, I mean, sometimes it is left to us. We need to just show something. So it could be that we just add something into the model, even if it isn't 100% accurate, just to show something, just to present back, to then start getting feedback and start that to-ing and fro-ing and that discussion between us and the end client, to then improve the image as we move through the iterations of the drafts.
Sure, makes sense. And what makes you decide? I know you got mostly experience with residential, so let's talk about potential, like example of a residential building. What makes you decide which part of the image to choose? Do you have a go-to? Is it a bedroom and a living room or a kitchen, or is there something else you're looking for?
I guess probably the go. I mean, if it was a residential property and there was just to be one image, the chances are it probably would be an external of it. But then after that, I think it would be kitchens and possibly bathrooms, which we might do to then that helps sell the development. But then that says we've also done lounges and dining rooms as well. I guess it just depend on the layout of that property and what best position or camera angle we can get to sell that scheme that can communicate it to potential buyers.
That's excellent. I know that basically visualizations can also be used to communicate projects that we haven't yet worked on, and I think it's quite a smart way, combined also with potentially research or publications around that topic, to move into or expand into a new market for an architecture firm. What do you think would be important to focus on as an architect when communicating a new idea that perhaps you've never built before?
I think to get the model right first, I think for me would be, even if that's just a grayscale model, to get the forming and the proportions and how it's going to look before you go too far down the road of what materials are going to be used to build the structure. I think, first instance, I would say get the model right. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. If anyone wanted to connect with you or potentially read your blog, where do they go to find you?
Well, the blog's on our website, which is resolution-studios.co.uk. I guess the alternative would be connect with me on LinkedIn and I can send you a link.
Sure. And there's a lot of the articles also published on LinkedIn on your profile. So I think just following you would probably be enough. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jamie, for joining me today and sharing this wonderful information with the audience. Wishing you all the best, and we'll see everyone soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.